Do you want to know how to code in an object oriented way? Do you want to find out the difference between how the procedural code is written and how the object oriented written? Do you want to know the best practices of how to code in an object oriented way? This video is for you. Welcome to the playlist on Java Full Stack. Welcome to Architect Design and Code with RK. This particular video we're going to talk about how to implement classes, objects and constructors. The anatomy of a class. Let's get started. So in the last class we discussed about the what exactly is a class, what exactly is an object, the basic principles of object orientation, etc. As you know, class is mostly a blueprint. Object is the one which provides visibility to that particular class. Typically a class contains fields, constructors and methods. So let's get into the practical side of the story. So if you want to define a class, you can actually say you can create a class like this. Select Java new class and then say finish. Remember one thing, the first letter of the class is always capital. The name of the class and the name of the file has to be the same. If the class is preceded by the public keyword, that means the file name has to be student.java. If you write public class student, the class name has to be student.java. Now a class contains attributes and operations. So attributes. Now let's say the class contains private int roll number. Now the naming convention has to be very clear. Roll number. Every attribute starts with a lowercase, and see when I pronounce roll number, there is a break between roll and no. It's like two words. The moment it happens, the word n should be uppercase. This kind of coding convention is camel casing, or I think it's a Hungarian notation. Okay. Now the next attribute is, let's say, string name, or in which grade the student is studying and all. So this is how you define the attributes, or in which school the student is studying. So this is how the attributes are defined. Now you can actually, every class you can actually have getters and setters. Either you can write it or you can right click, use the benefit of Eclipse, and then you say generate getters and setters. Now you see a basic difference, that the attributes are defined as private, whereas the methods are defined as, so these are all functions. A function belonging to a class is known as member function. Another name for a member function is a method. If a method is public, then you can create an object and you can get benefited. Like you see here, I am actually going to create a object of it. So we'll say student is equal to new of student, and you can actually say student dot set roll number of, let's say, 10, student dot set name of Rama, student dot set grade of, let's say is in 8th grade, student dot set school, let's say Greenwood school. This school is near my house. Now what I'm trying to tell you is, you cannot you cannot say student dot roll number is equal to 8. The reason is, uh, regarding access specifiers. The if any attribute or method is declared as private, it can be used only within the class only. The scope of a private data member is within the class only. So, whereas this app class is outside the student class. So anything which is private is not accessible. Only the public methods can be accessible. And you know one thing, there is something like a toString method. So you don't have to write it. Eclipse source, and then you say toString. So every class extends from the object class. Object class provides the toString method. Now let us see the magic. I don't have the toString method. Okay. Now in order to display, right, I have to say system.out.println and then student.get roll number. So this is the only way you can actually uh, get the data out. Now same way you can actually, yeah, so here you can actually say get name, get grade, get school. You can actually, right now what happened is we just created a single object, and this is the way you can actually display it. There is another way to display also. You can actually say system.out.println and then just leave it as student. So if you do not define anything and just leave in a thing, an address gets displayed. Correct? Some com.training tuck tuck tuck, some address is getting displayed. But do you know the magic? If you implement the toString class, if you implement the toString class and then you just refer like line number 23, right? Then what happens is the data is getting shown. So most of the time when you really work on projects, you don't have time to call individual getters for a class. You just have to use the object name and you get this particular data. Okay, so this is the anatomy of a class. This is the structure of a class. In fact, a class has got all the things. But have you, I think you might have heard about a constructor, right? There is no constructor defined over here. Now what is a constructor? A constructor is a method of a class carrying the same name of the class. So if you do not define a constructor, then JVM will create that default constructors and give it to you. But you can actually define a constructor also. So you can actually say something like public student system.out.println, can actually say constructor called. This is to make sure that the constructor is getting called. So you see here, right click, run as Java application, and then it says constructor class. If you create 10 objects, then you will see 10 times getting constructor called. If you define a million objects of the student class, then you will see million times this constructor is getting called. So constructor is a, right now constructor is a public method because I have defined it as a public, and it gets called automatically without you explicitly calling this particular method. So constructor carries the same name of the class. You can see this is how this is also known as default constructor. What do you mean by default constructor? A default constructor is a constructor without any arguments or without any parameters. If you do not define a default constructor, JVM adds it by himself. They can actually do that. Okay. Now the next question which I ask is, are you coding in an object oriented way? Yes, the student class is a typical entity class coded in an object oriented way. Now, but I have my own doubts on whether we are coding in an object oriented way or not. So I'm going to give you certain exercises. Let us be hands on, and I'll act. So let's say there is something like app 2.java public static void main, and let's say that I'll give you a program. Write a Java program to accept the radius of a circle and display the area and the perimeter. I do not want to trouble you with giving a big requirement. Such a small program also can be coded in an object oriented way. Remember, from now on what I am explaining, right? will make a lot of difference the way you code in Java. Okay, so every time you write 2 lines of code, now you will start saying whether I can code that in an object oriented way or not. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the best practices of writing code in a in an object oriented way. Okay, now every time I'm going to give a solution, let us discuss whether we code in an object oriented way or not. So what is written here? Accept the radius of a circle and display the area and the perimeter. Instead of going for scanner and all, let me define it. So let's say this radius is equal to 5, and then you can actually say double area is equal to 3.14 into radius, double perimeter is equal to 2 into 3.14 into radius. So this is how area and perimeter can be calculated. Now easily you can actually say system.out.println, and then you can say area, system.out.println, and then you can actually say perimeter. Now the question is, are we good at it? Of course we are good, correct? So when we run the program, right, you can easily see the output that area and perimeter is coming. 95% of the college grads or junior engineers who are starting their career in Java end up coding like this, because they look at what needs to be done. They do not think about, are we doing it in an object oriented way, correct? Now this kind of programming approach is known as, I would say this is an algorithmic approach. This is neither procedural nor object oriented. This is like, just shooting what needs to be done. This is what you want, take it. This is what you want, take it. Now is the piece of code what you have written is reusable? Don't worry about it. We are not thinking about that. If we are not thinking whether this piece of code will be reusable or not, it is not an object oriented code. Got it? So by looking at the code, if you find the code not reusable, right, then it is not an object oriented code. Neither it is object oriented nor it is procedural oriented. So I'm sorry, this doesn't lead to us anywhere. Now how to write a modular code or how to code in an object oriented way? Now let me copy the program so that we can preserve all the varieties. Wow, are you having fun? I'm having fun. Now if you look at app3.java, now what we will do is we will try to write using functions or methods. So you'll say public static double get area, and then you say int radius. Don't worry about the static keyword for now, just ignore it. I'm going to, in my next video, I'm going to talk about static, and that's where you're going to get everything. So here I can say return 3.14 into radius. Similarly, you can actually say double get perimeter is equal to, yeah. Now instead of you writing the logic there and there, you can actually say get area, and you can actually say radius, get perimeter, radius. Okay, now when you look into this code, right, when we look into this code, compared to app2.java where we directly solve the problem, where the concept of reusability is not there. I think we have written a much better code where tomorrow if someone wants area and perimeter in some other calculations, they might say app3 dot get area and they can actually call it and then get benefited. Now this kind of programming is known as procedural programming. Most of the programming languages like C, Pascal, Fortran, which are procedural languages, people code in this way. So I will say I'll give 10 out of 10 points if you are saying this is a good code, because it is modular code. It is reusable. Yes, it is object oriented or not. It is not object oriented is because we are not using the basic principles like abstraction, encapsulation, etc. But this is procedural code, this is modular code. This app3 is way better than app4. Now let us make a copy of app4. App3, I'm making a copy and I'm pasting it again, so it becomes app4. Now let us start thinking about how to write code in an object oriented way. Viewers, this is the most important part of this video, so please focus on it. Okay, I really request you, because if you want to code in an object oriented way, this is the way it has to go about it. So object oriented programming is programming using classes and objects. I'm trying to write it down over here. Object oriented approach or programming is all about using classes and objects. So we should talk about what is the class, what is the name of the class. You should talk about what is its abstraction, that means what the class will do. We should also talk about how are we implementing it, that is encapsulation. So if you do not breathe abstraction and encapsulation, you are nowhere near writing code in an object oriented way. Now what is the name of the class? This is the fun part of the story, right? Like student, I think I will go with the name of the class as circle. Okay. Now one thing which I wanted to talk about is the class name is generic in nature. Okay, so I have seen when I do corporate trainings, I have seen many students writing the class like get area, get perimeter, and all kind of things. A class name is mostly like an entity. It is not action oriented. So accept the radius and display the area and the perimeter. Do not give such kind of names. Leave it. The class names is generic in nature. Okay. Now what is the abstraction of the circle? Right now you need area and perimeter. So you can actually say something like public double get area. Okay. And public double get perimeter. So this is the abstraction of the circle class. Like I am interested in area and perimeter right now. So what an entity does is abstraction. So the abstraction of the circle is fetching entity and area. That's it. Area and perimeter. Now the next thing is how are you going to implement the encapsulation part? That is where I will say print I radius. You can actually define a constructor, but right now I think you can actually say public circle. Okay, so this is a default constructor. Now how do you calculate area? You can actually say return 3.14 into this dot radius. into this dot radius. Similarly, perimeter is 2 2 into 3.14 into this radius. You can actually take it out. Got it? By default, the radius value is 0. So this is actually what you call as the default constructor. You can actually do constructor overloading, and you can actually say something like int radius, and then you can say this dot radius is equal to radius. I'm not a big fan of initializing the class, right, via constructor. The problem is constructor is a method which can be called only once, and this gets called automatically. So reinitialization, we actually miss it. So I am not a big fan of a constructor. Rather, I would like, have a getter and setter to the radius. I love this actually. Getters and setters are always there. You don't know how many getters and setters I would have written in my life. Now, when we come back to app4.java, remember app3.java. Now I'm going to take out, because we are coding in an object oriented way, there is no place for independent methods. They're out. Now what are we going to do is simple. We're going to say something like circle is equal to new of circle. You can actually pass the value 5 because of the constructor which we have provided, and then you can say system.out.println, right? Circle dot get area, system dot out dot println circle dot get perimeter. Right click, run as Java application. See, there is no, sorry, just a second. Yeah, so there is no difference between apps output of app3.java or app4.java. It's pretty much same only. The only difference is right now we came up with the circle class and we started coding in an object oriented way. Correct? So circle is the name of the class. Yes. And the second thing is there should see a class should be independent of how it is going to be used. Actually, what I wanted to tell you is you can develop a console application, correct? Or you can develop a desktop application, or you can develop a web application. So when you're defining an entity class, okay, do not fill the class with scanners and sysouts and all kind of thing if you are doing a console application. If you are writing a class, do not put sysouts inside the class. Do not put scanners inside the class. That is something which you deal it with it here. When you are writing the class, it is it has to be done. So if I have to do refactoring of this particular code where I'm not still happy about it, if I have to do refactoring, what I will do is I will not pass the value, rather than I will say circle dot set radius, and then I'll put the value as 5. The benefit of calling the set radius instead of constructor passing is set radius can be called 1000 times or 10,000 times, and you can keep reinitializing the class. So when I right click run as Java application, I get this output. Now if let's say the radius is 15 centimeters. Now automatically the value can be changed. Now just because you wanted to pass a different radius, right, you should not touch a constructor and all. So this is how it is done. Do you think I'm still happy about the class? Let me look into it. See, I worked in finance sector with most of the banks like Citigroup and State Street corporations, etc. And I wanted to tell you the biggest mistakes what we do is hard coding the data. See, I always say, is your code is production ready? I'm sorry, this code is not production ready. By looking at this code, anybody will come to know that somebody who is new to Java, who is learning Java, is writing this particular code. I'm not a big fan of it. So what needs to be done? See, there is a definition, there is a something like risk. Now, are you sure the value of pi is 3.14? Are you telling the people who are reading this code that this is pi? Nothing, no? You just wrote some number and you went about it, right? So what you can do is you can define a constant and you can actually say private static uh, final, and then you said double pi is equal to 3.14. You can write it like this, and wherever wherever the hard coding is done, right, like 3.14, you can actually use pi. So compared to the previous style of a coding, this is a much better code. But are you good? Still I'm not happy with it. You know why? When you take the decision, you, who are you? You are a developer. You take a decision that the value of pi is 3.44. Are you sure about it? Most of the business analysts sitting in New York, you know what they do? They use some tools like Excel or something, and they find out what's the value of math and they use it. Now if your business guys are saying the value of pi is 3.14167891 and you are writing 3.14, so the output of business analyst and the output of a developer is never going to match. When the output is not matching, then obviously it is a bug in the code. So I'm trying to tell you, do not take a risk. Now how do you can do? By being extra smart. So I'm not a big fan of declaring this as a static variable. Okay, so I'll put a comment here so that we can improve it. So what I will do is, instead of that, I would like to import, and wherever this pi is there, right? So I will say math.py. Yeah, there is a math package from Java. There is a math package from Java, and this is how it is. Now, for the sake of it, no, I'll write a sys out. I will take it out, but I wanted to know the value of math.py. Just I'll remove it. It's just a matter of seconds. So when I run the program, you see I get a different value. Earlier when I used pi as 3.14, I had a different value. Now the value is totally different, right? Now you see the value of pi is 3.1415926535897993. This is coming from your Java library, and this is more acceptable than your value of 3.14. So my dear friends, my dear viewers, do not take a risk of you deciding what is the value of pi. Leave it on the math library. So be smart. Now tomorrow if there is somebody like business analyst or the QA team saying that, boss, your area calculation is wrong, show them the door saying that, boss, I've used the math package. So according to Java 21, the value of pi is 3.1459. Now if you disagree, let me know what is the value which is agreeable by customers, and I'm going to use about it. Now you must be thinking, for simple calculation of area and perimeter I'm spending this much time, but behind, that's the reason my example doesn't is not complex, it is very easy. So I can actually say that this code is a much better code. The chances of this code getting into production is pretty good, pretty high. And this is how you code in an object oriented way. This is where you can see that abstraction and encapsulation, everything is followed. Now I would like to give you one more program and then see whether you are doing it or not. Remember, this video is all about coding it in an object oriented way. This video helps you to improve the way you code. Now let's say that I'll say app5.java public static void main. Now I'll give you another program like write a Java program to accept two heights in feet and inches and display their sum in centimeter. This exactly is my requirement. Write a Java program to accept two heights in feet and inches and display their sum in centimeter. Correct? Now do you want to code? Do you want to code in main function? No, right? Are you scared of it? Are you scared of writing code inside the main and finishing the story? If you are scared of doing it, then that means you already got 5 points out of 10. You have already started thinking coding in an object oriented way. Now you want to write functions and solve the problem? No. If you are not planning to write methods and solving the problem independently, I will give you 8 out of 10. Now there are two more points for you to get it. So if you are thinking whenever you're see, now let me tell you what is object oriented approach. The moment I see the problem statement, I say write a Java program to accept two heights and feet and inches. So I kind of picking height as an entity. So this time what I will do is I'll define a class called height. I'm just watching about it. I'm not scared. I'm just thinking about it. Like, am I doing it the code in an object oriented way? The class height seems to be generic, right? Your height is 175 centimeters, your height is 176, or your height is 6 feet 4 inches. My height is 5 feet 10 inches. So like that. So height is definitely a good candidate as far as the class is concerned. Now, as per the requirement, the height is in feet and inches. So I can actually say something like private int feet and private int inches. That's it. Absolutely fantastic. Now, the experience of the previous code, we do not want to put that much of pressure on the constructor. So anyhow, the default constructor is there, right? Like public height. That's it. So this is a default constructor. Do not depend on it like so that's my asking. I'm asking do not depend on it. Try. Okay. So what you can do is you can get setters and getters. That's it. You can actually say like this also, like public void set height, and then you can say int feet and int inches, and then say this dot feet is equal to feet, this dot inches is equal to inches. Now please understand one thing. What is this? This is a reference pointing to the current object. This is always current object. Now if you do not put if you do not put no, you say feet is equal to feet, this is absolute chaos, because you are trying to take accept a parameter and trying to change the value of parameter. It actually doesn't make sense. But when you do this dot feet, you are trying to change the value of the attribute. So this is how it is. This is absolutely the right way of writing the class. Now when I go back to this particular side, okay, now we are talking about two heights, right? So let's say height 1, h1 is equal to new height. See, I'm not depending on the constructor. That is something which you have to see. So h1 dot set height of 5 comma 8, h2 dot set height of 5 comma 9. So h1 has a height and h2 has a height. Now what is the question? Write a Java program to accept two heights and display their sum in centimeter. Now I wanted to ask you something is when you add two integers, the output is an integer. When you add two float values, the output is a float value. When you add two strings, the output is a string. When you add two double values, the output is a double value. When you add two complex numbers, the output is a complex number. So when you add two heights, the output should be a height. This is what is the object oriented sense. It's not common sense, it is like object oriented sense which is beyond the next level actually. So so whenever you are writing the code, you want to write in a object oriented way, you say public height add and then you take height as h. Now please understand this, in an object the difference between a procedural language and an object oriented language is, in case of procedural oriented platform you need two parameters because you want to add two heights. Now add is a method of the height class. So one height is anyhow available for the class. You just have to pass the other one. Okay. So let me try. So I'm going to define a temp variable. Okay. And then say temp dot feet is equal to this dot feet plus h dot feet. Temp dot inches is equal to this dot inch plus h dot inch if temp dot inches is greater than equal to 12. This is just the logic, okay, of a height calculation. And then you can actually say temp dot feet plus plus and temp dot inch minus equal to 12. So you are reducing 12 and increasing the feet and then returning the temp value. So the temp is a temporary object whose whose scope is within the add function. So object oriented programming, okay, let me make a note of it, is object oriented programming is all about programming in objects. So you should encourage passing objects as parameters and return objects. Now try, instead of passing height and feet and inches, it is smarter way to pass an object. Now this is how you code in an object oriented way. Looks like I have forgotten a semicolon because uncle is crying. Yes. For me, if there is a syntax error, I say uncle is crying. Now this seems to be a good code. Okay. Now actually let us actually say height h3 is equal to h1 dot add of h2. See, this is how. So if I say system dot out dot println and then say sum in centimeter, correct? So that means I have to come over here and I have to return the value of sum. So I can actually say something like bubble double get centimeter return, I think 2.54 into feet into 12 plus inch. Now you should always use this dot. You should always say this dot and okay. So what I'm trying to say that is you should, if the math library is providing, you should use it. Otherwise you can say private static final is equal to double, and you can actually say this 2.54. So whenever you are writing code in software development companies, Hard coding is something which is not accepted. Now what happens is, if somebody argues saying that it is not 2.54, it is 2.56, and if you have used in 10 places of your project, you have to make changes in all the 10 places. But if you declare as a constant, for defining a constant in Java, there is no const keyword in Java. You have to use static and final. In my further videos, I'll get into the details. But right now, please understand, if you want to define a constant variable, this is how it is. Now, if you want to expose the inch to centimeter outside, then you have to declare this as public. You can actually declare a constant as public because it's not that risky enough. But if you are defining it as private, that means only height is able to use this, no one else is actually able to use it. Now if I come back here, and then I can actually say s3 dot get centimeters. I think I have waited to tell you this particular point in the fag end of this particular discussion. Object oriented programming is all about passing objects and getting objects. Now, yes, you should always code for what is being asked now, but keep an element of reusability, so that in future, if the requirements change, then you should be able to incorporate that also. So imagine there is a requirement called 3 heights. Let me refactor this code, change this code. S3 is equal to new height, and let's say s3 dot set height of 5 comma 7. So yeah, so you can actually see that there are 3 heights. Now if we want to add the sum of all the 3 heights, you can say h1 dot add of h2 dot add of h3, and then you can actually say this. Now this is one of the beautiful code which I have written, where I don't care. What did I say? I don't care. Looks like okay. Sometimes I get errors. I see why is the uncle crying actually. So when I run this program, you can actually see that the sum in centimeter for all the 3 heights is 5 and 6. So I can actually say like this. See, now look at the output. It looks so good, so elegant and all kind of things, right? Now please understand, object oriented programming is all about programming and objects. So you should breathe objects. You should code in an object oriented way. You should pass objects to parameters and return instead of, so if a method of a class has got too many arguments, right? Then according to effective Java, you should replace the arguments with objects as parameters, because parameters as objects work fantastic. So this is exactly what we have discussed about the class. Did you like today's video? I just loved it. I'm really interested in improving your career, improving your life and all. Everyone, please spend time, and if you are a student or a software engineer, my only request is watch my videos in laptops, keep Eclipse open, give a pause of my video every 20 minutes, try to grab what exactly I'm saying, practice it and be good at it. If you got any questions which I'm not able to answer while explaining the video, put it on comment. I'll be the first one to reply and answer it. Okay, so we discussed what is the anatomy of class. Class contains fields, objects and methods. And remember, whenever we declare h1, h1 is a memory which is getting allocated in the stack. But the moment you do new and you try to allocate memory, it actually uses heap. That's the difference. What exactly is a constructor? A constructor carries the same name of the class. Okay, class doesn't have any return type. There is no void also which is there. And how many times a class gets called? Only once. Got it? Yes. In the in my next video, I'm going to talk about access specifiers, right? Like there are other than private and protected, we have something like pub private, protected, public, default, etc. Default meaning you don't specify, that's how exactly it is by default. Okay. In my next video, I'm going to talk about static keyword, which is very important keyword as far as Java is concerned. I would like to thank all of you for watching this particular video. Please like and subscribe this YouTube video. Hope you have loved it. See you in the next video. This is RK signing up. Please watch my YouTube channel Architect Design and Code with RK. See you. Bye bye.